In this video, we're going to be talking about the vertical line test and then also domain and range. So let's start with the vertical line test. Now, a vertical line test is also known as the VLT. It's a visual way to determine if a curve is a function. So for example, let's say that we have our graph, our green graph, and we take a vertical line, and that's our red line, and we move it across our graph. As we move it, it's only going to touch our green curve or our line one time. And so that tells us that there's only one input for every output, and so this is a function. It passes the VLT, the vertical line test. Take, for example, this one though, where as we pass our vertical red line across our green curve, we see that it actually touches our green curve 2 times, which means that for that single input, we have 2 different outputs. So that means that this is not a function because it fails the vertical line test because there are 2 outputs for 1 input. Let's talk a little bit more about domain and range. The domain of a function is the set of all possible input values. Generally, those are our x values. And the range is the set of all possible output values, which are generally our y values. Let's go ahead and let's do some examples. Let's begin by determining whether the graphs represent a function. So here we see a vertical dotted red line, dashed red line. So imagine taking and moving that along each of our pieces. Would they be functions? Would they pass our vertical line test? If we take our vertical line and we move it across A, we can see that it's only going to touch each of our pieces one time here. So that's going to tell us that yes, this is a function because it passes the vertical line test. Let's look at letter B. So we'll take our line, and now let's move our line along here. So here we can see that it's only going to touch one time. So that's going to tell us that this is also a function. So yes, it passes the vertical line test. Let's try letter C. So here, if we take our vertical line and we move it across C, we see that it's going to touch in 2 places, right here and right here, and that's not okay. So this tells us no, it's not a function because there are 2 outputs, there are 2 different outputs for 1 input. Let's go ahead and let's try letter D. So we'll take our vertical line and we will slide it across D, and we see that it's only going to touch just the one time. And so here we can say that yes, it passes the vertical line test. Now let's take a look at our next function here. So here we can take our vertical line, and as we move it, we see that right here we run into a little bit of an issue, right? Because at the number 2, we see that it touches 2 times. So here that tells us that no, this is not a function because for the input 2, there are 2 different outputs because we can get a 2 and a 3, and so that's not right. Now let's do an example where we find the domain and the range. So here we're being asked to find the domain and the range of the functions represented by the following graphs. So if we take a look at graph A, in order to find our domain, remember that's the thing that all the x's could be, right? So here we find that our domain is allowed to be the values where x equals a -2, a -1, a 0, a 1, and a 2. Well, what are our ranges? So the ranges, remember, are the things that y is allowed to be. So here we have a y at 0, we have y's at 2, and we have y's at 4. And those would be our range. Letter B is a little different because now it's not just a set of points. It's part of a curve as well. So here, our domain goes from this number all the way to that number. So here we're saying that x has to be between, but can equal, the number 1 and the number 5. Because that's where our points cross, right? This is at 1, and this here is at 5. And I know to put the equal to sign because my points right here were colored in, not open. Now our range is going to be what y is allowed to be. So here we see that y starts at 0. Let's try that again. Starts at 0, and it goes all the way up to the 4. So it goes from 0 to 4. But it has to be between those. So y is between 0 and 4. And again, it touches this point right here, so it can be equal to. And our circles are colored in, so that's going to be equal to. So here for C, we have a set of points again. So why don't you push pause and see if you can do this problem. And when you're done, push play and let's see if you were right. So here for my domain, I'll have a list of points. So here, x can be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. My range will also be a set of points. Y can be, well, all of those are at the number 3, and all of these are at the number 4, so my range will be the numbers 3 and 4. Letter D is similar to letter B, so why don't you go ahead and give that a try on your own. So push pause, and then when you're done, push play and let's see if you're right. So for D, we have a domain where x must be between -3 and +3, so -3 and +3. We see that our circles are filled in, which means it will have equal signs underneath. For our range, we see that we have a minimum of 0 and we have a maximum of 3 because it goes up 1, 2, 3. So between 0 and 3. So y is between 0 and 3. And again, because we are touching at 0, we'll have the equal to sign there. And because our circles are filled in, our points are filled in up here, then we'll have the equal to sign there. And so this is how you find the domain and the range of the functions.